Yes, there were two very important fulfilled prophecies that you missed out on. Okay, in our time we were off YouTube, two very, very significant events took place that the people are not aware of. So we're going to go over them in this video, of course. And we've been on a series of how we saw the king of Babylon in Jeremiah 52 fulfill prophecies related to 9/11, jihad, and Zedekiah. So this is the Zedekiah figure aligning with the apocalypse timeline. What's apocalypse timeline? 7 good years, 7 bad years, 14 years of the king. So Daniel talks about this 62 weeks, 7 weeks, and 1 week, okay, leading us to this time. Now we count years and weeks that would lead us to two very important fulfilled prophecies. Now, I realize that many prophecies you guys don't understand unless you see something physical. So these are physical signs you can see. The peace deal is a physical sign you could see. Netanyahu out as prime minister is a physical sign you can see. And the 17th of Tammuz, Tammuz sacrifice, daily sacrifice, but they didn't actually sacrifice a sheep. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Okay, are these two significant things. Benjamin Netanyahu fulfilling a type and shadow of King Zedekiah, king of Judah, that you read about in Jeremiah 52. Okay, so there will be a sequence where we count years, guys, and we count weeks. So the 62, the 7, the 1, all right, we will count them. So you add the years from when Israel was established as a nation, 62 years. Okay, that leads us to prophetically the Lord Jesus Christ sitting on the throne, act as a type and shadow of king in the book of Esther. Okay, those 62 weeks of years. Then we have another 7 weeks of years leading us to the Cyrus decree. At the Cyrus decree, we would then have completed, okay, 70 years to let the land rest. Okay, so we would add 1 more year to confirm the covenant. Okay, so 1948 to 2010 to 2017, 2018 to 2019 on the precise day, the first day of the 11th month. Okay, was the peace deal, fulfilling the prophecy perfectly from Daniel that we would know exactly when the tribulation was. Not only that, the precise date of the peace deal. So once we arrive at the peace deal, then we would count weeks. Okay, so we counted 62, 7, and 1 years, but there would be actual weeks we would count as well, 62, 7, and 1. All right, this would lead us to these prophetic times of the woman given 2 wings of an eagle. Okay, and the other things, the other 2 significant things of Zedekiah being captured. Okay, we're going to do another video on the woman being given 2 wings of a great eagle. Very significant sign there in Revelation 12. Okay, but is it manifesting physically? Yes, to those that believe. But in this video, we're going to really focus our attention. This will be a series, guys. But in this video, we're talking about the 2 very important fulfilled prophecies that you didn't even know happened. Now, let's remember, make it clear, Trump is the Antichrist. Okay, when they made this coin, which commemorated the moving of the U.S. Embassy, here you can see everything we just talked about. The 70 years, Cyrus, they're calling him Cyrus. We're not calling him Cyrus. We're calling him the Antichrist. He did the peace deal, okay? And here you can see in this article that Trump's peace deal is akin to the Cyrus decree. Now, we had identified the Cyrus decree, and that's what we told you about earlier. But they're calling it the Cyrus decree, paving the way for the third temple. All right? I mean, you can see that's clearly what they're saying here. So we're going to go over this just as a reminder. Many people said, oh, okay, well, Trump wasn't reelected. He can't be the Antichrist. Well, you can't erase history. All right? So they're calling Trump King Cyrus. Now, in the events here, what you can see is Trump, as a King Cyrus, is the king of Babylon. Then what happened is king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, but then there was another king, the king of Judah, and he was called King Zedekiah. The King Zedekiah figure made a peace deal with the king of Babylon. You can read about that in Ezekiel chapter 17. We have many videos where we talk about this very article. Okay? So what happened, guys, is Benjamin Netanyahu, we found proof when he was taken out as prime minister, he was in the role of prime minister the same 11 years as King Zedekiah, fulfilling perfectly the role, the prophetic role. So prophecy is like a movie, okay? The prophet said it, and then it repeats, okay? So this will be a repeat in our day of the prophecy related to the king of Judah, okay? Now, you can see what's interesting is this article goes back to January 2020, shortly after the peace deal. But notice what they say here. They're talking about the Palestinian state. To be honest, I have no doubt Trump actually opposes Palestinian state, surely more than Bibi. It is clear that to me that the purpose of this deal is to strengthen Israeli sovereignty and to bring an end of revolting idea of Palestinian state. On this issue, I trust Trump more than Bibi or Naftali Bennett. Why are they talking about Naftali Bennett? He's not prime minister. This article is going back to 2020. Okay, so it's interesting. They're almost alluding to the fact of what we're saying, that Benjamin Netanyahu would eventually be replaced by Naftali Bennett, because he was not a major figure in the elections. You had elections, and then you had re-elections and re-elections, okay? But it had to be, Trump fulfilling this Antichrist role, okay, to establish this peace deal, all right? So this article talks about this. We talked about this before, but this proves to us that you have this other figure called Zedekiah. And so when Naftali Bennett made a coalition, okay, he did so right at a critical time. Okay, at that critical time, we're going to explain to you where that is on the calendar. But here they're calling Trump King Cyrus, okay, and the recognition of him as a Cyrus. And then, of course, they talk about Netanyahu agrees that he's a Cyrus, okay, like Truman was. Okay, so they're going on and on. So this is amazing because in this article from 2020 in January, like a week or two after the peace deal, they were talking about Naftali Bennett, which, I find very, very interesting. It's as if they knew at some point there would, be a change and there'd be a shift, okay? But this is what we're saying is that these types and shadows, okay, we can see. Now, of course, we don't believe everything the Jews say because they will be promoting a different Messiah than what we have, okay? But when they're minting these coins and everything, these are indications to us of certain prophecies happening, being fulfilled. So Netanyahu thus fulfills this role of King Zedekiah. Now, let's use the calendar and retrace our steps as to what happened here and why it's so significant. So the third month is the month of Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks, okay? And then it was shortly after the solar eclipse. There was a solar eclipse on June 10th. Now we'll see that the solar eclipses align with many of these prophetic events. Now I can't remember the exact date, but I know it's one of these dates here in June, and that was when the coalition came together and Netanyahu was removed as prime minister. Okay, so that's right here at the end of the third month. Now, in the fourth month, which you can see here, we have the fourth month, and in the fourth month, the Jews recognize something called the 17th day of Tammuz. Now, Tammuz is not the right name for it, but it's the fourth month. So in the 17th day of the fourth month, they have a fast. And what they do is they fast from the 17th day of the fourth month, and they fast up until the 9th of Av, the 9th day of the fifth month, okay? Now, this brings us to our second significant thing that happened that you guys didn't realize. So on this precise day in the Jewish calendar, the 17th day of the fourth month, Tammuz, they reenacted the daily sacrifice. So once again, we're on Israel 365 News, and here you can see the article. The 17th of Tammuz, the priests train for Tamid sacrifice, offering for the third temple service. Now, over the years, we've explained to you guys that these are actual sacrifices for the third temple. Now, these have been going on for a number of years, okay? Now, what they did is something extraordinary this year in this 4th month. So they did a 17th day of Tammuz, the priest trained for a Tamid. Now, when you read Daniel, and it says daily sacrifice, in Hebrew, that word is Tamid. Okay, so we could translate this, and we could also say the priest trained for daily sacrifice for the third temple. Okay? Now, the reason this particular sacrifice is extraordinary, I'll bring it to your attention, is in the daily sacrifice, guys, for years, okay, they've offered a lamb. You shall offer one lamb in the morning and one in the evening. So Numbers 28 tells us about the daily sacrifice. I have another video on that which explains the whole daily sacrifice. So what they do is they do these things. They call them reenactments, okay? And they fasted. So here they're talking a little bit about the fast on the 17th day of the Hebrew month of Tammuz, a group by 50. Okay, they went out to witness a run of the Corbid. Corbin is the priest, Tamid, a twice daily sacrifice performed in the temple. So for us, we would say in English, we would call this the daily sacrifice. So they're reenacting the daily sacrifice. Okay, so then here they explain it. Okay, they talk about the prophet Zechariah predicts the fast of Tammuz in the 4th month. The Hebrew calendar is mentioned. So this is a fast that is mentioned scripturally in Zechariah chapter 8, verse 19. Okay, so it is in there. And they would be fasting for the temple and the destruction, okay? And that's historically what they were doing. So, you can see here, it would be a full reenactment, including the slaughtering of the lamb. So many years, they've been slaughtering an actual sheep. Then what happened, the last one we witnessed in Jerusalem in 2019, that was the last one that they physically on site slaughtered a sheep and had the blood of it on site. Since then, they haven't done it. Why? The daily sacrifice has been stopped, as we've been telling you. Okay? So here they're talking about the sacrifice and what they do and the history of it. Okay? But what happened is this year, they got away from Jerusalem. They got away from the activity, even in the government's approval. There was no coronavirus to prevent them from sacrificing a sheep. Okay? But they didn't actually sacrifice a sheep. Okay, here it is. So the rabbi of the Kohanim, okay, that instructs the reenactment, insisted a full reenactment, including the slaughtering of a lamb, and the arrangement of its pieces would take place with a minimum of 15 priests present. Unfortunately, this was not the case. So Rabbi Kahani was not in attendance. A lamb was included for illustrative purposes, but was not slaughtered, guys. So the whole purpose of this whole thing they're doing is to do the daily sacrifice. You cannot complete the daily sacrifice without the lamb. Okay, the lamb sacrifice. And as we've been saying, this has been now continuing since 2019. That was the last one because the daily sacrifice has stopped. Okay, so here they talk a little bit about the daily sacrifice, the history since King David, okay, and the lamb. All right. So the lamb must be without blemish, and since the lamb used for the demonstrative had the government mandated identified ear tag, it was disqualified use as an animal sacrifice. So they couldn't even sacrifice it if they wanted to. The rules were against them. Now, this is amazing because they've been sacrificing sheep up there for many years, at least 7 years. But since 2019, it stopped. Not only did it stop, they did this on precisely the 17th day of the 4th month. Okay? Now, what that date is, guys, is that day is the day the daily sacrifice was taken away historically. Okay? Historically, in Jeremiah 52, the daily sacrifice was taken away from the 10th day of the 10th month in the year of Zedekiah, and Zedekiah was captured in the 9th day of the 4th month. So he's our type of Netanyahu. All right? Now, let me share the notes on the previous message. I don't want you to lose track of what we're talking about here, guys. So, Netanyahu fulfills the Zedekiah role, okay? Now, what happened, guys, is Nebuchadnezzar encompassed Jerusalem 3 times. The first time was in 605 BC. Now, what we're saying is that is a reenactment or a prophecy that's refilled in our day. In our day, that was 2001 in 9/11. Okay? Now, that there was another time he captured Jerusalem in 597 BC. Well, that is 2009. In 2009, it began the beginning of Barack Obama, and it began the beginning of the historic king of Judah, King Zedekiah. Along with King Zedekiah, Netanyahu. Okay? So Benjamin Netanyahu is Zedekiah, king of Judah. He had the host taken away against the daily sacrifice. Okay? And he does the peace deal. So Bibi is Zedekiah and sees the siege of Jerusalem. He does the peace deal covenant with the Antichrist, fulfilling exactly the role of Zedekiah, king of Judah. Then the siege of Jerusalem happens a 3rd time. It begins on the 10th day of the 10th month. Okay, that's what happened historically. In our time period, okay, this 10th day of 10th month is Christmas, 2019. What happened? The onset of COVID-19. Okay, when the government shut the people, laid siege of the citizens in their home, in lockdown. Well, that's the same thing. There was the siege of Jerusalem that took place, all right? And what happened is it began then, and then it went from the 9th year of King Zedekiah, that would be the 9th year of Benjamin Netanyahu, okay? And went from there to his 11th year. And there was a famine. Now you're seeing the famine. You're seeing the store shelves. Many of you are seeing them empty. Okay, the famine will go from the 10th day of the 10th month to the 4th day of the 4th month. All right, this is just a few days after Netanyahu was out. Now, Netanyahu was out as prime minister the same time Zedekiah was captured. So Zedekiah was captured on the 9th day of that 4th month. So this proves to us that Benjamin Netanyahu fulfilled the same 11 years as King Zedekiah. He did the peace deal. He had the daily sacrifice taken away. Okay? Then what we have is prophetically the 9th of Av as our next prophecy. So I hope that makes sense. So you can see Benjamin Netanyahu, taken out as prime minister, is fulfilling the Zedekiah role. All right? Now, the other thing is you can see in the 4th day of the 4th month, okay, the famine was there. This is when the daily sacrifice was taken away. Between this time period, historically, the same thing happened. The people couldn't sacrifice animals. There was no more food. Okay? So the daily sacrifice was stopped. The daily sacrifice is also stopped in our day, and nobody knows about it, guys. Now, let's go over this again. So in Daniel's weeks, okay, they also correspond with Jeremiah in the siege of the walls around Jerusalem by Babylon. Okay? So that started, as we said, on the 10th day of the 10th month in the 9th year of Zedekiah. Okay, see that? Now this is the onset of coronavirus. All right? And then what we would do is right after coronavirus was the peace deal. So in January 2020, the peace deal was signed, and that's our commandment to begin counting weeks. So that happened on a precise day, the same day Moses confirmed the covenant, the 1st day of the 11th month. So from that commandment, we count 62 weeks. Okay, those same 62 weeks is the Ezekiel bread. So Ezekiel was on one side, 390 days, the other side, 40. Okay, adding up to 62 weeks. So those 62 weeks of Ezekiel, he was practicing the famine. That's what I was showing you, the prophet's diet, Ezekiel bread, because there's a famine in the land. That's for 62 weeks. That would bring us to Passover this year. So it's first fruits, Passover. You begin counting the Omer for the 7 weeks. And these are little weeks, of course, we're counting from that. And then we would arrive at Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks, okay? 50th day. 1,335 since the woman clothed with the sun. Okay, that's our rest week, and then you have confirm the covenant 1 week. All right, that's Mount Sinai, and that's the 15th day of the 3rd month. Okay, the week after Pentecost, you confirm the covenant 1 week. Okay, then you have the king's decree in Esther, by which you count another 3.5 weeks. These 3.5 weeks are in Daniel 10. Okay, but what that does, it brings us to the 16th day of the 4th month. Focus. Okay, so that 16th day of the 4th month, guys, that's the same thing we're telling you. It's the famine in lay, walls of Jerusalem, Zedekiah fled. Okay, those things happen on the 9th day of the 4th month. So all these things prophetically have been fulfilled this year. All right, and then after that, Daniel chapter 10 talks about another 3.5 weeks, all right? That's a new wine harvest, and that's the 12th day of the 5th month, and this is when the temple was burned and destroyed. Okay, the 7th to the 10th day of the 5th month of King Zedekiah. Okay, so I know that's a lot. We're going to have other videos. We're going to go over the same thing, but what I'm telling you is that there's a series of weeks from the peace deal that we then count for these same things. Within that, we have Zedekiah. When Zedekiah fled is precisely when Netanyahu, okay, was taken out as prime minister, which is precisely our confirmation of the daily sacrifice. Because keep in mind, through this whole thing, the daily sacrifice was taken away. So yes, the daily sacrifice being taken away is the amazing prophecy of Daniel that nobody knows about. Guys, if you're new to this work, please refer to the videos that we're going to refer you to. We have a playlist on the peace deal and the other video on the daily sacrifice being taken away. But here you can see a perfect schedule of events. Establishment of Israel as a nation, 62 years to Esther, 7 years to King Cyrus, okay, and a year of rest, completing the 70 weeks of Daniel perfectly. Now the prophecy continues, so that from that time, then we would have the confirming of a covenant 1 more year. Okay, so this prophecy happened precisely on a date that we had told you ahead of time, guys. So this is all continuing as our apocalypse timeline. 7 good years, 7 bad years, okay? This is the same timeline that we could see with King Zedekiah. So we're in the 11th year of our apocalypse timeline, and that was the same 11th year and precisely when Zedekiah was taken out, just like Netanyahu. So these are the signs that you can physically see of the prophecy being fulfilled perfectly on precise dates. The peace deal, Benjamin and Netanyahu taken out, the daily sacrifices taken away. Why did they do a sacrifice on the 17th of Tammuz and they didn't sacrifice a sheep? That's the whole purpose of the sacrifice, because the daily sacrifice is taken away. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll have more on a series of videos where we'll provide the notes and more information. Thank you. God bless you.